Hey, today we're going to talk about 5.8, Impacts of Overfishing. Before we begin, check out the Enduring Understanding, look at the learning objective, pause the video, review the essential knowledge, and set up your Cornell notes. So there are different methods that we use to obtain fish for human consumption, and these are 4 examples that are shown here, and some of them are more sustainable than others. A purse seine is basically taking a giant net, and a net that has kind of like a drawstring, kind of like what you might find in like your laundry bag or something like that, where you have this big net and then you pull it tight so the fish cannot escape and you draw it up. Now, one of the drawbacks to this is you are getting entire schools of fish and you are not selectively pulling out the fish that are of the proper age. You may be getting pre-reproductive and post-reproductive fish, which is not contributing to the maximum sustainable yield that we talked about in earlier lessons. Another method is using a long line, and a long line involves basically little floaters and having some sort of bait on there on hooks that fish are going to come and be attracted to this. One of the benefits of this is that you can have different bait for your target species that you are trying to catch. So it may be a little bit more sustainable. However, it is not going to result in high profit margin because there is just one line and you cannot guarantee that you are getting all of the fish that are in an area. A bottom trawl is basically scraping this net along the bottom, and it is very good for getting benthic organisms. Remember, benthic means organisms that are on the bottom. However, you're also destroying any habitat that is on the bottom of the ocean, and this is especially damaging in areas that have coral reefs, because it can be incredibly damaging to the coral, and coral reefs are areas where there is high levels of biodiversity, and this is something that we don't really want to impact. And the last one, an example, is a drift net. And a drift net involves having floating devices that basically allow this net to sink, and this is another way of catching entire schools of fish. And the problem with all of these different types of nets is that you get unintended targets, which are called bycatch. And bycatch is anything that you catch in a net that you don't intend to catch. So it could be like turtles. If you're trying to catch tuna, for example, and you catch dolphins instead, like that is an example of bycatch. Sharks are caught often in these nets. So all of these organisms are not intended, and this contributes to unsustainable practices. So I'm just going to go through a little brief flowchart. So a fishery is basically a commercially harvestable population of fish within a particular area. So whenever we talk about fishery collapse, that is relating to a particular type of fish that we are consuming. So we tend to overfish these areas, and that can lead to population decrease, which can lead to a collapse in the fishery. And this is when 90% of the fish have been taken by humans. And this leads to biodiversity loss because other organisms rely upon these fish, so it can impact the food webs. This bycatch is a problem because the non-target populations will decrease, which leads to this trophic cascade as well, also contributing to this biodiversity loss. All right, something that we can implement to sustain our fish populations is an individual transferable quota. And what this means is you give a license to catch a particular number of fish. This will help to preserve the overall population, and it will not lead to biodiversity loss. However, it will limit profits. It is a little bit more expensive, and we can't just go out, cast our net, and just take in anything that we find. But the populations of these fish will be permitted to replenish themselves. So there's also been laws enacted to protect fisheries around the world. And these are 3 of the laws that you are responsible for knowing, and they could apply to other aspects of this course as well. So the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora, just remember it's CITES. So the CITES. If you legitimately remember CITES, that's good enough. It's an international treaty that prevents species from being endangered species from being traded. So if there's a species that's endangered globally or in a particular area, it prevents international trade. The Clean Water Act is a United States law that regulates the discharge of pollutants into the U.S. waterways, but it also sets quality standards for surface waters. That's waters that are like lakes, rivers, streams, wetlands. And finally, the Endangered Species Act. It's a United States law that protects species from being endangered, and then it is how we carry out the provisions that have been established in CITES. This is what we do in the United States. So we prevent people in the United States from trading these endangered species internationally. So I would like you to practice with this FRQ. I want you to propose a solution that addresses the global issue of fishery depletion. So there was some information that was given to you in here. I thank you for your attention, and I will see you soon.